the KLI SR4 has probably got to be one of the most revolutionary and craziest gas blowback airsoft guns to come out to date. And there are a couple of reasons for it. Number one, let's talk about the externals. Yes, it looks like, your typical run-of-the-mill airsoft M4, but this is where a lot of the insane features are kind of hiding in plain sight. First of all, let's talk about the receiver group. The receivers are made out of forged aluminum. This is insane. This is probably the first time ever that an airsoft gun is coming out with a forged aluminum receiver group straight from the factory. A lot of times, if you want something of that quality, you usually have to go to aftermarket sources for that, and they are extremely expensive. But KLI is giving you a forged aluminum receiver out of the box. And why is that? Well, number one, it's because the recoil is insane on this thing. This thing kicks like a mule. And in order to sustain that for longer periods of time, you need a strong receiver group that's not going to be cast, but it's going to be made out of forged aluminum instead. So big ups to you, KLI, for doing that. And let's also talk about what's inside of here. So inside the airsoft gun itself, if I can just pull the pin out real quick. Oh, there we go. Let's talk about the bolt carrier group on this guy. So already straight from the get-go, you're getting a steel bolt carrier group. This is also pretty insane, very hefty, very heavy. And again, this is so that way the system can be reinforced enough to run full CO2 for long periods of time. Because like I said, this guy kicks really hard. You need strong parts for that, which is great. And also, not only that, you're also getting a really, really strong reinforced buffer system as well. So you're getting an extremely long buffer spring, which is very nice and tense, and you have a steel buffer itself. This guy is basically made out of solid steel. It's very heavy. It's probably the heaviest buffer I've used in an airsoft gun ever. And with all that combined, you're getting a ton, and I mean a ton of recoil. It really kicks you in the shoulder. Now, as I put this back together, the next thing we're going to talk about is going to be the magazine itself. So the magazine is going to be a very unique design as well. It's not going to be using, I don't know, let's say like an LM4 magazine or a Tokyo Marine magazine or a W magazine. It's using a unique magazine in and of itself. And here's why it's really cool. Because inside the magazine, this is the only airsoft M4 of its kind that can run 2 CO2 cartridges at once. This is a truly unique system, and this serves two benefits. Number one, obviously, you got a lot more CO2. You can use a lot more of that to kick you in the shoulder with the recoil. But number two is that this pretty much makes it winterproof. You can pretty much run this guy all year round without having to worrying about your airsoft gun going down due to the cool down effect. So that is really cool. And the FPS is actually regulated in the magazine. So if you're worried about this guy shooting too hot, KLI has got you covered. This guy shoots roughly at around 400 feet per second, and that's because the magazine is regulated internally. So one cool thing is that you could do it by magazine. So KLI will be releasing a CQB variant of the magazine, so you can run it indoors to have it run under 350 FPS. And you'll have the outdoor magazine, which will get you around 400 FPS. So instead of changing parts inside the gun itself, all you have to do is just swap a magazine, and you can change different playing environments to your liking. Very fast, very convenient, which I think is really sick. But not only that, the inside of the trigger group is also going to be made out of steel as well. So it feels remarkably solid in the hands, especially when you pull that trigger. So for example, even the trigger has a very crisp, a very audible break, has a very audible reset. It is probably as close to a true mil-spec trigger that you can get out of an airsoft gun. And I think with all that combined is extremely impressive from KLI, and I can't wait to see what they got cooking up next.
So how does this compare to the NWS? Some people like NWS.
Yeah, so the Tokyo Marine MWS, I have one personally. They're great. They are very expensive to get into. It's going to cost way more than the KLI, obviously straight from factory, but you can't run it stock completely. So even though you're spending more money out the gate for the MWS, you still have to spend more parts into upgrading it so that way it could handle the extra pressure of green gas. With KLI, you just set it and you forget it. You just a hop up. That's pretty much it, honestly. And you don't really have to worry too much about maintenance costs because of how durable all these internal components are compared to the MWS.
Any take on what type of players should buy this?
Yeah, so I think for anyone who's looking for that extreme recoil, anyone who wants to run a gas blowback airsoft gun all year round, no matter what weather conditions you're playing in, that's perfect for you, especially for all my hardcore milsimmers out there that want that realism of a gas blowback rifle, but you're not too sure about weather conditions and how it'll perform. I think this is perfect for those kind of players.
Is this for guys who want to tinker and upgrade the gun?
Tinker and upgrade, probably not. I mean, there are some things maybe externally that you can modify with the KLI, but if you're looking to completely soup up the internals and the externals and have a ton of parts available for it, I would say maybe the MWS might be the way to go. But if you just want to set it, forget it, and have it perform well, I think the KLI is absolutely fantastic.
Can you even run steel bolt in an NWS?
Steel bolt MWS, it is possible, but you're going to run into a lot of inefficiencies and you're going to run into the cooldown effect a lot more. It's just going to be a very sluggy system. So with most gas blowback rifles, generally you want to have a light of a bolt as possible, just because the pressure on green gas is just not as much as CO2. So this is where kind of KLI is changing the script here, is that they are intentionally running a heavy bolt because they can get away with it because they're running 2 CO2 cartridges in the mag.
How many rounds can you go through 2 cans of CO2?
So with 2 cans of CO2, it's very dependent on how you're firing this gun. If you're shooting this guy in like full auto or you're really spamming the heck out of the trigger, I would say conservative, you'll probably get around like a mag and a half, maybe 2 mags worth. If you're having a moderate pace of fire throughout, you could easily get 2 mags worth of BBs out of 2 CO2 canisters.
So is it pretty efficient?
I'd say it's probably just as efficient as all the other airsoft guns out there that run green gas.
But it kicks super hard.
Yeah, it kicks way harder than any of them. So because of all that, because of how heavy everything is inside and that's just kicking you in the shoulder, I'd say, for what it's doing, I think the efficiency on this thing is pretty fantastic.
Thank you, Boaz.